Welcome on back, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. This is our Western Bulldogs 2024 review episode. Their season has come to an end, and as with every team, once they get eliminated, we do a little review episode on their season that was, having a look at the stats, having a look at the players, what went right, what went wrong, and it was a very strange year for the Doggies, so we'll be checking all of that out. Jump in the comments below. Let me know what you think of the Bulldogs season this year. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, and check out all of my socials at All Aussie Rules everywhere. We have a podcast that goes live twice a week on Spotify and YouTube, so go check that out. But without any further ado, Bulldogs 2024. They made finals. They went 14 wins, 9 losses, finished 6th on the ladder before a disappointing exit in week 1 of the finals. So let's have a look at their season match by match. They started the season with a rough performance, really. Melbourne smacked them at the MCG, lost by 45 points, but they bounced straight back with a dominating first quarter against Gold Coast, then smacked the Eagles before a couple really, one good performance against Geelong at Adelaide Oval in Gather Round was really good performance that day. Only lost by 4. Libba and Bont were both outstanding. Round 5 was arguably their worst performance of the year. 29-point loss to the Bombers. They just did not show up that day at all. They turned it over a lot. Just a bad performance that day. They bounced back the next week with a 60-point win over St Kilda before a couple more losses against Fremantle and Hawthorn. And at this point, people were calling for Luke Beveridge's head. They were 3 wins, 5 losses. Their season was not looking great. It turned around a little bit heading towards the bye. They got a smashing win against Richmond by 91 points. 27-point win over GWS in Sydney was a really good result. They then followed it up with a loss to Sydney by 14 points, but beat the reigning premiers Collingwood by 18. Lost to Brisbane by 43 points, which maybe that is a worse loss than the Essendon one. I'm not sure. They're probably similar-ish. And then going into the bye, beat Fremantle by 67 points at Marvel Stadium, and it was like, here we go, they got some confidence. But then they went round 16, beat North Melbourne before round 17, getting smacked by Port Adelaide by 48 points. But from then on, it was, as you can see, a lot of green. Beating Carlton, Geelong by 47 points at GMHBA was a huge result for them. Sydney by 39 points at the SCG. Melbourne by 51 points at Marvel, before dropping a strange one to Adelaide by 39 points at Adelaide Oval, which we'll get to in a minute, but could well be a very costly loss for them this year. They then finished the year with wins against North Melbourne and GWS. North Melbourne by 96, GWS by 37. Left them in 6th on the ladder. That one loss cost them 3rd spot against Adelaide. If they had have won that one, they would have finished 3rd on the ladder. They would have had a second chance. They would have been going to Port Adelaide to play Port Adelaide in week 1 of the finals. So with a second chance, who knows what could have happened. But as it turns out, they finished 6th on the ladder. They played Hawthorn in a MCG final, which is a bit rough on them, seeing that they finished 6th and they don't get any home ground advantage out of it. But that's the way football is. And Hawthorn beaten them, comfortably took care of the Bulldogs that day in the elimination final by 37 points. So a disappointing end to the Bulldogs season. When we look at some of the numbers, you'll see why it is so disappointing for them. So this is their record and some stats over the last 3 years. If you just go by either year, but their numbers have certainly risen attacking and defensively over those years, but didn't really perform better overall. Slightly younger team than last year and very much similar experience level as last year, so that's good signs for them. 2022, they had a pretty good year, finishing 8th on the ladder, even though they had to use 41 players. They were a lot younger then, a lot less experienced, so it suggests that they were ready there, maybe a little bit young. 2023 was probably disappointing to finish 9th. They just threw too many games away in the end. And then this year, they finished 6th on the ladder. And once again, maybe just threw too many games away, and that cost them in the end. Here is a look at all their stats. We're not going to go through them all because, as you can see, it is a lot. But just some basic ones, like that scoring differential is huge. Plus 18.9 points per game is, was during the regular season second best in the AFL, only behind Sydney, who finished top of the ladder. So their point differential was really good. You look at the rise from last year as well at 6.7 points per game positive last year to up to 18.9 is a huge rise. And even though they kicked poorly at goal, 46.9% this year, which is well below last year and the year before, and their opposition probably kicked very straight this year, well above the AFL average there. Disposals, similar-ish across the board year in, year out. They dominate the field position this year, like they did previous years as well, but this year even more so, plus 9.3 per game. Their metres per gain grew massively as well. They dominated getting the ball forward, getting the ball moving. Intercept game, they were really good at this year. Big improvement on last year, and even more so on the year before. Contested footy, slightly down on the last year, but their uncontested footy certainly rose. Clearance game is as good as it has been. Kind of dropped off a little bit, but still overall pretty good across the 3-year period, including this year. Forward efficiency is where they really did well, which made up for the fact that they kicked poorly in front of goal. 50.4% this year is well above average in the AFL, and defensively 47.4 is kind of close-ish to the average. So defensively around about the AFL average, offensively slightly above. Tackle games, okay. Hit-outs is where they kind of get smashed, which, I mean, they have for the last 3 years. Tim English is a really good ruckman, but he's not the best hit-out winner. However, their hit-outs to advantage really dropped this year, back to like 2022 numbers, even worse than 2022. So that kind of tells me that maybe his ruck work just dropped off a little bit, which maybe wasn't the best sign for their season this year. But yeah, that's that. We'll have a look at the score sources for the Bulldogs. We'll move that slightly. So what have we got here? Obviously, scoring is kind of up across the board for them in kick-ins, offensively and defensively, both increased. They really improved their scoring from stoppages, where defensively stayed about the same. So there's a massive net gain there, plus 9 points basically from stoppages. From turnovers, stayed about the same, but defensively got better. So that's a really positive sign there. Their defensive half scoring went slightly up by about 3 points. Forward half went up just over a point, and their clearances went up by 4 points. So across the board, they really did improve in pretty much scoring every which way. But I think the stoppages is probably the main point that looks really good. Their scoring from stoppages this year certainly improved. 4.5 points from centre bounce, and also about another 4.5 from stoppage clearances. So massive improvement in that regard. Maybe they were just really down last year on their scoring from stoppages, because you go back to 2022 and their numbers pretty similar to this year. So maybe 2023 was a really down year for them in terms of scoring from stoppages. Having a look at players to miss a lot of football this year for the Bulldogs. We had Bailey Smith miss 24 games. Will he play for the Bulldogs again? It seems unlikely. It looks like he'll probably be changing up clubs at the end of 2024 when we get to the trade period, which is a bit disappointing for the Bulldogs, but that's football these days, isn't it? Alex Keefe missed 19, James Harms missed 15, Johannesson missed 15. Lachlan McNeil and Riley Garcia both missed 12. Joel Frazier, obviously, young player, 11 games missed. Riley Sanders, 10. A lot of these are just due to form, not so much due to injuries or whatnot. Some are to injuries, obviously, like the Bailey Smith one. Caleb Daniel and Rory Lobb both missed 8. Buku Kamas and Cody Waitman both missed 7. Tom Liberatore missed 6, and Jack McRae missed 5. Now have a look at their best players across 2024. Sorry, it's not quite in frame. Let me just fix that up. Liam, we'll start with key defenders. Sorry, Liam Jones, solid year, 21 games again. Slightly better rating than last year according to AFL ratings. I should just point out the rating in 2023 rating is AFL ratings, the official champion data / AFL rating, which isn't always the best picture, but it also does give a pretty good sign. Liam Jones improved, had a good year. He started really well, maybe not quite as good towards the end, but he was very good for them. Certainly when they were even losing games, he was very good. Rory Lobb was a revelation once going back. Obviously last year was a key forward. Was in and out of the team a bit early season this year. Up forward, came into the side in the second half of the year in the back line and really played outstanding. His numbers were good. He changed the game for them really down back. His intercept work was very good. His defending was very good. So possibly a revelation going forward, and something that maybe resurrected his Bulldogs career. He wasn't too happy early year, wanting out of the club, but found some consistency, and maybe going forward will be able to continue to grow as a Bulldog in the back line. Alex Keefe only played the 5 games. Pretty solid, not anything outstanding, but solid enough. Key forwards, Aaron Norton, much the same as what we kind of expect from him across year on year. A rating of 10.09, slightly down on last year, but his numbers overall were pretty good. Sam Darcy, I think, was their biggest revelation this year. He's showing the signs that he's going to be an absolute star of the AFL for years to come. He's tall, kicks goals, he'll be able to play in the ruck, he'll be able to go forward. There's not a lot he can't do, really. He even showed some really good signs late season, elimination final against Hawthorn, getting back when he was rotating through the ruck, and the work rate going back was really quite outstanding from him. He took an intercept mark on a fast break at one point, which I thought was very impressive from a young key forward / ruckman. So positive signs for that going forward, and a long career at the Bulldogs will be huge, you would imagine, for Sam Darcy. Jamara Ugle-Hagan, I don't know what to make of this guy. His rating's much the same as last year. He didn't start too well. His second half of the year was much improved, but he's just a little bit hit and miss still. His best is outstanding. I can't think of which game it was, but he played a really good game. Might have been the Sydney win. He was outstanding. But then you look at the elimination final against Hawthorn, he didn't do much at all. Medium defenders, they solid numbers across the board. Bailey Dale had a really good year, no doubt about it. Didn't miss a game, did a lot right. Joel Frazier, in his 13 games, was really good, showing that potentially could be a really good player going forward for them in the long term. Lachlan Bramble came in, did solid without being outstanding, but still solid enough. Johannesson missed a lot of football. His rating was slightly down. Taylor Giray played it almost every game, only missed the 2. His rating isn't fantastic, and I would imagine looking towards next year and maybe going on, might be a player that maybe rotates out of this team lineup, their best lineup, really. You'd imagine Joel Frazier is probably going to be full-time in their team next year. And, yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's one that makes room for some others. Their medium forwards, Jack McRae really dropped off this year. Obviously, midfielder, medium forward, mid-forward. He plays a lot of roles, and this year he was just never really happy. Missed 5 games, wasn't playing in his preferred role. For whatever reason, they don't want to play him in the midfield, and maybe they'll see him change club at the end of this year. We'll see. But his rating was certainly down. He's still got a couple years left in him, you'd imagine. Maybe not at his best, but he certainly can do better than what he showed this year, I think. Riley Garcia played 12 games. Played really well in those 12 games. Much improved on last year's performances. Some positive signs there. Riley West, he played almost every game, was really good throughout, much the same as last year. Cody Waitman, he missed a bit of football, a couple injuries throughout the year. Showed some really good signs, certainly early season. I think it was the Gold Coast game. He kicked 4 or 5 in the first half, maybe even the first quarter. Was really good at times. Once again, maybe a little bit quiet at other times, but has the potential to be one of the best small forwards in the competition. Lachlan McNeil, really good year from him. He only played the 12 AFL games, but I think he showed enough to warrant maybe some more games next year. The people that classify as mid-forwards, James Harms, obviously more of a forward than a mid, but rotates into the mid a little bit. Came across this year, first year at the Doggies, played really well. Wasn't always outstanding, only played the 9 games, but I think showed enough that he should probably be in their best 23. Caleb Daniel, he was down on form, there's no doubt about that. Big drop off from him, which certainly hurt them, I think, as someone that rotates through the midfield. We'll get to the midfielders in a second, but I think that's where they really need that. A little bit more depth. Riley Sanders, I think he showed enough this year. Played 14 games, was a bit in and out of the team. I don't think Beveridge was always that happy with him, but I think he's shown enough that he's going to be a really good player in the long term, and someone that maybe next year will rotate into that midfield role a lot more, as their midfield is certainly getting on in age. We jump into their midfielders. This is probably the strongest 4 midfielders for one club in the whole AFL. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But they lack the depth after those top 4, I think, at the moment. And that's probably where they need to try and find a way to get Riley Sanders back, or get him into that midfield group. Maybe Jack McRae or some of these smaller players, medium-sized forwards and defenders, rotate them through the midfield a bit more, because they don't have the depth there at the moment. But Bontempelli, I think, AFL rating-wise and also just flat-out football-wise, I think he's the best player in the competition. Has been last year, this year. Will he get recognised with a Brownlow? We'll find out next week, but probably not, because the umpires just don't seem to like him as much as others, but he's by far the best player. He had a bit of a quiet elimination final for whatever reason, but absolute dominant player. I wholly believe that he's the best player in the AFL. Adam Treloar, I think he played career best year this year. He did get his first All-Australian nod. Outstanding season. Just improved in every way, got a lot of football, did all the hard work. His disposal was pretty good across the board, so he had a great year. Another big improver, Ed Richards, fantastic season. 21 games, really showed that he can step up in that midfield, win the hard ball, get the clearances, get plenty of it, and do well with the ball as well, setting up plenty of opportunities for teammates. Tom Liberatore was a bit down on previous form. I think this is probably where we see him probably finish out his career at about this level. Obviously has the big issues with the concussions and whatnot, but last year was outstanding. This year slightly down, but still very solid year. Like 14.36 AFL rating is a very solid rating. His best is still absolutely insanely good. Bailey Williams slightly improved on last year. Didn't miss a game. Solid enough, but I just don't think he's... I don't know. He's probably a 5th or 6th midfielder, but they probably need a couple more in there, I think. And then Tim English in the ruck. The rating dropped immensely. As we mentioned, hit-outs to advantage for Bulldogs really dropped off. He's their main ruckman. He's a very good ruckman around the ground. He gets the job done, but he wasn't as good this year as he was the previous year. And maybe that's a big reason why they just didn't quite have that extra X factor to get them over the line in some of these games that they needed to in the end. Final thing to look at is a couple players that left the club. Josh Bruce obviously retired. He was at the end of his career. His rating last year wasn't that fantastic, so no real loss there. And Jordan Sweet didn't even get a game last year for the Bulldogs. They traded him out for, I think, pick 48. and to Port Adelaide, who obviously use him as a ruckman. 9.76 is okay as a rating for ruckman. I think he played about 16 games. It's not outstanding, but and to be honest with you, Bulldogs don't really need a Jordan Sweet when you look at what they've got. Obviously, Tim English is still their number one ruckman. Sam Darcy is a backup. They've got Rory Lobb. They've got plenty of tools. So it's probably not the biggest loss, in all honesty. So that's the Bulldogs 2024. What do we think of them? What do we think of them going forward? A lot of commentary on the Bulldogs is that they're the most underperforming team. Probably an accurate assessment, in all honesty. I've been of the strong opinion they're the most inconsistent team. They started to show a little bit more consistency in the second half this year, but they still lost that game to Adelaide, which made no sense really. Scoring offensively and defensively across the year is outstanding. Like, there's no doubt about it. They were the second best points differential in the AFL. And they finished 6th on the ladder, and which tells you that they flog teams and don't get flogged too often, but maybe they just lose too many games that they shouldn't in the end. You'd have to think that they have the potential to be a top 4 team and to be in premiership contention. They're slightly getting on a little bit. Like, there is quite a little bit of age. Bont's certainly heading towards the end. Treloar's heading towards the end. But they've got some really good young talents coming through. Sam Darcy is spoken about as potentially the best young talent in the competition. So they do have plenty of talent coming through. It's going to be interesting. I think they need to make a decision on Luke Beveridge, to be honest. Because, I mean, he's a good coach. There's no doubt about it. But is his time up at the Bulldogs? Maybe. Maybe fresh eyes, fresh leader might be what they need. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. But they just need to make a decision, because they can't be going through this year again with question marks over his head if they lose a couple games in a row. You want it to be clear, decisive. This is our man. We're sticking with him. Or vice versa. Be like, thanks, Luke. You've done your time. We think it's time to move on. Either way, Bulldogs have the potential. I think they have the skills. They just lack something that I don't know what it is. But they lack something that gets them over the line at the moment. I think the talent-wise, game plan-wise, top 4 team, in my opinion. They just lack it. Something, what it is. So maybe 2025 will be different. I'm backing them in for top 4 next year. They probably should have been there this year. I'm backing them in for top 4 next year. Better start to the year will be huge for them if they can do that. So we'll see. But let me know in the comments below where you think they finish. I'm going to put them in for 4th at the moment. We'll see how much that changes over the coming weeks. But we'll lock them in for 4th at the moment as my prediction. How far off do you reckon I'll be? Jump in the comments. Let me know. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. Even if you didn't, maybe still give it a like. I appreciate you for watching. This has been the Bulldogs. Coming up later in the week, we're going to have the 2 semi-final teams that got eliminated. So that's going to be Hawthorn and GWS. We're going to have the regular podcast episodes. There's 2 every week, Mondays and Fridays. Monday from now on is AFLW Day in the podcast, and then Friday will be the AFL Men's episode. Next week we're also going to have the Brownlow preview episode. Plenty of content on the YouTube channel, but also check out the Spotify, check out all the socials at All Aussie Rules everywhere. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.